All right, so again, we assume that all organisms are like us because we usually think of us and we think of organisms that we have in our house, like our dogs and our cats, and their life cycle is just like ours. We're basically a diploid organism. We make sperm and egg make babies, and then the babies grow into an adult diploid organism. But that's not always the case. That depends on the organism. So this is what we see in humans. You've got fertilization and meiosis. All sexual life cycles have those in common. All sexual life cycles have fertilization happen somewhere in the life cycle, and meiosis happens somewhere. In humans, the fertilized cell, the zygote, undergoes mitosis and grows into a multicellular organism. Meiosis only happens in the sex cells, and then these sex cells either join up and get fertilized or they die. Sperm and egg don't grow into a multicellular sperm and egg and hang around for a long time. They only live for a short period of time, and they either get fused together in fertilization and grow into an adult again, or they just die off. But not every organism does the same thing. So there are actually going to be 3 different sexual life cycles. And I don't think there's anything to write from this page. It's just an introduction. So again, meiosis and fertilization are common in all 3 of the life cycles I'm going to show you. What's going to differ in the 3 life cycles is which version, haploid or diploid, grows into the multicellular organism. So let me show you, I'm going to show it to you in these 3 pictures because on the test, you'll see pictures. You won't see verbal explanations. So even though I'm going to give you verbal explanations, I think the verbal explanations are kind of confusing. The questions are going to be about pictures. And on the AP exam, they typically do the same. They give you pictures and ask you questions about this. So let me show you the 3 life cycles. So the first one is animal. I'm pretty sure they're not going to show you a picture of a mouse in the picture, so that is not going to be how you're going to know this is the life cycle of an animal. So this is life cycle number 1. Here's what I want you to notice. Here's meiosis and fertilization. Those 2 things happen in all 3 life cycles. All right, when meiosis happens and makes gametes, you'll notice that there's nothing here about it becoming multicellular. They're single-celled only. So this is the N generation. It's only single-celled. The second part, the 2N generation, you see the word mitosis here. Mitosis tells me that the 2N generation, the diploid version, becomes multicellular. So all animals show pretty much this life cycle. The 2N or diploid version of it becomes a multicellular organism. The haploid version stays single-celled. The second picture is plants. All right, again, just like in the first one, you see meiosis, you see fertilization. Look at the meiosis side. This is the haploid version, N. It only has 1 copy of each chromosome, and see the word mitosis. It doesn't matter that you see the word twice, by the way, because depending on how they draw it, they might show the word once or twice. But the bottom line is, if you see the word mitosis, that tells me that the haploid version grows into something multicellular. There's a multicellular haploid version. And down here, here's our 2N, and we see the word mitosis again. So the diploid version also becomes multicellular. So multicellular haploid and multicellular diploid, that's plants. The last one is fungi. I think it says fungi, and I think it mentions some kind of algae or something. But I would say fungi on a test. Here's meiosis and fertilization. So here's our haploid version, and see the word mitosis. So our haploid version becomes a multicellular organism. It divides and becomes multicellular. Our diploid version does not. So, in summary, and again, I'm going to give you the verbal explanations, but quite honestly, this is going to be what you'll see on a test. What you want to look for is, where does mitosis happen? Where does it become a multicellular organism? If it only becomes multicellular when it's diploid, between the fertilization and meiosis side, it's an animal. If it becomes multicellular on both sides, on the side that it's haploid and on the side that's diploid, it's a plant. And if it only becomes multicellular on the haploid side, then it's a fungus. Yes?
So this is like when it says like, for example, for the animal, like fertilization, that's like
when the 2N starts, and then that zygote undergoes mitosis and makes lots of copies and becomes a multicellular organism. Meiosis is just what creates the cells that are haploid. So meiosis is a process that makes haploid cells, single cells, and then if you see mitosis anywhere in there, that would mean that those single cells now make copies of themselves and become multicellular. Correct. All right. So that's technically what you would need to know for a test. You would see some kind of pictures. It may not be those exact pictures. Again, probably it's definitely not going to have pictures of the actual organism because that would give away which is which, and they probably would mix them up. But the questions you'd be asked would be like, which one is showing the life cycle common in plants? Which one is showing the life cycle common in fungi? And that's what you're going to look for, is where are they multicellular? I know the picture you have in your outline is different, but I have that picture here too, and I'll show it to you one more time at the end. All right, these are the verbal explanations. Again, to me, these are confusing. There will be no questions on the verbal explanations, but this is explaining what I showed you in the picture. In animals, gametes are the only haploid cells. They're made by meiosis. They never become multicellular. If they fuse into a zygote, which is diploid, that will grow into a multicellular organism. And that grows into a multicellular organism by the process of mitosis. Mitosis makes more copies, exact copies of cells, and that grows into the multicellular version of the organism. So this is the verbal explanation of animals. But again, all you have to understand is the picture. So meiosis, fertilization. Meiosis creates cells that are in, fertilization creates cells that are 2N, and then where do we see mitosis happen and make it multicellular? It's going to be down here in this section, on the side where they're diploid. That's what you're going to see, and that's going to tell you that it's the sexual life cycle of an animal. All right, plants are the ones that are really confusing. You will not be responsible, this is just the same picture, you will not be responsible for this vocabulary. So in plants, you have what's called an alternation of generations. Basically, starts with two haploid cells, they fuse into a diploid cell. That grows into a multicellular organism called a sporophyte. Not on test. The sporophyte makes haploid spores. They grow into a multicellular organism also called a gametophyte. Again, that word, not on a test. That's just the name of the haploid multicellular version and the name of the diploid multicellular version. And again, it would be sort of like if a sperm grew into an adult sperm that was like multicellular and lived its life. That's basically what's happening in some species of plants, is that they have a version that starts off, it's not a sperm, but it's a haploid cell, and it grows into a multicellular thing that is haploid. Each of its cells are haploid. That makes cells that fuse and become a diploid version, but both of them grow into multicellular versions. And I believe there's one more page of explanation on this one as well. Here. The gametophyte makes haploid gametes, and then those get fertilized and you go back to the sporophyte. Again, none of this vocabulary will be on a test. If you understand the pictures, that's all you've got to understand. So this is the verbal explanation of it. And I'm sure if you wanted to, you could look at a video that would go into more details and explain sporophyte and gametophyte, but you will not be tested on those vocabulary words. All right, and then we're going to wrap this up. The last one is the fungus, the fungi. Here's a picture of plants. Again, the key here, mitosis. I see mitosis on both sides. So I have a multicellular haploid and a multicellular diploid. And this is what fungi do. So fungi have a diploid stage that's single-celled. That single cell undergoes meiosis and makes haploid cells, and then those grow into a multicellular adult. So the adult version is made of haploid cells rather than diploid cells. Two haploid cells will fuse together and make a zygote, but the zygote immediately undergoes meiosis and then grows into it. So if you were to go pick mushrooms, for example, and look at the cells of a mushroom under a microscope, you would actually see that those cells would be haploid. They would have only one copy of each chromosome. I don't know how many chromosomes a fungus has, but there would only be one copy of each, because that's the adult version of a fungus. So, and again, and I know I've said this like 4 times, you will not be tested on any of the verbal explanations of the life cycles. All you have to know is the pictures. Now, I know that the picture you have is a little different, so I have that picture too. So I'll show you what to look for again in the picture that you have. Because they have all different versions of this picture, but they will all have mitosis, meiosis, and fertilization. So here's the fungus one on the left, and the one that you have in your notes. Here's meiosis, here's fertilization, and notice we only see mitosis, multicellular organism, here on the haploid side. So I see multicellular only on the N side, not on the 2N side. No mitosis. Here's animals. Here's here's meiosis. Here's fertilization, and I only see mitosis, which tells me where it becomes multicellular, on the diploid side, on the 2N side. I don't see any mitosis on the haploid side. And here's plants. We've got meiosis, we've got fertilization, and I see mitosis on the left, and I see mitosis on the left and on the right. So the 2N version becomes multicellular, and the N version also becomes multicellular. So that's your key. That's how you would distinguish them. I wouldn't worry too much about, like I said, all the vocabulary. Just recognize from pictures, where does mitosis happen, and that's going to tell you the answer that you're looking for. All right, that's actually where we're stopping.